4 spine-chilling true horror tales. Discover the sinister secrets behind these haunted events. Hannah Turner gripped the box tightly as she stepped through the front door of her new home, an old cottage with chipped paint and sagging eaves. The moment she crossed the threshold, a chill swept through her, as if the very air held its breath. With her heart pounding, she glanced back at her 2 kids, Mia and Jake, happily tumbling out of the car. They desperately needed this fresh start after escaping the clutches of a crime-ridden city. But the humming lawn-mowers and rustling autumn leaves serenading the quaint suburban neighborhood were ominous harbingers of the dread that lurked just beneath the surface. As evening fell, the comforting sounds of the day faded, replaced by strange whispers that snaked through the hallways. Hannah brushed it off as her imagination, telling herself it was merely the stress of moving. Yet every night, the sounds grew more insistent. When her gaze darted to the corners of the living room, she felt her breath quicken, shadows flickering just beyond her line of sight, as if they were teasing her sanity point one day. While working at her new job, she glanced out the window and caught a glimpse of Mia laughing with a neighborhood girl, Rachel. There was an unsettling gleam in Rachel's eyes, too mature for her young age. Hannah felt a jolt in her stomach. They were supposed to be forming new friendships, but the tales swirling from Rachel's lips seemed to weave an ominous web, a legacy of past residents disappearing without a trace. Conflicting instincts surged through Hannah, but Mia was entranced, enthralled by the darkness of those stories, unaware of the lurking danger. As twilight swallowed the day, the once friendly neighborhood transformed into something nightmarish. Hannah began to notice the neighbors watching closely, the smiles twisting into something predatory. She could feel it, a suffocating tension, just under the surface. Imagine her horror when Jake, innocent and bright, returned home, wide-eyed, and blurted out about the strange man he saw lurking near their yard. Panic crashed over Hannah like a wave. Who was watching her children? What darkness was hidden in their supposed sanctuary? Night brought with it an eerie silence that thrummed in Hannah's ears. While tucking Mia into bed, a faint scratching erupted from the walls. The sound clawed its way into her mind, scratching at her sanity. Her heart raced as if it could leap from her chest. The realization twisted deep within her when she noticed Jake hadn't he come back inside. Pounding panic surged through her as shadows danced beyond the window, elongating into grotesque shapes. She called out for Jake, but all that returned to her was the mocking silence. She flung open the door, plunging into the feral darkness. The streetlights flickered, casting sinister shadows that contorted with menacing intent. She sprinted down the street, heart pounding in fear, her breath short and sharp. What had she stumbled into? Did these neighbors, those smiling faces, know more than they let on? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Hannah's feet pounded against the pavement, dread creeping up her spine. She turned back toward the house, the place that was supposed to be a refuge. But everything felt wrong. As she inched back, a blood-curdling scream shattered the silence, echoing like a death knell in her ears. The realization struck her. In this neighborhood cloaked with normalcy, true horror lurked just beneath the surface. What other terrors awaited her in this hidden world? Hannah's heart thundered in her chest as she turned towards the source of the scream. It echoed and faded into the night, ricocheting off the silent homes that flanked her. Which of these charming, picture-perfect houses housed such malevolence? She fought the urge to retreat, unwilling to leave Jake in the clutches of whatever lurked beyond the veil. Her mind raced. Where could he be? She quickly scanned the shadows, dark, cavernous gaps between houses that seemed to ripple and shift. Just moments ago, the neighborhood had felt alive, but now it was suffocatingly still, like a predator lying in wait. "Jake!" she shouted, her voice wavering against the night. Anxiety sliced through her sanity. The only reply was the sound of leaves stirring, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. As she stumbled further down the street, something caught her eye in the corner of her peripheral vision. A flicker of movement on the porch of a nearby house. She squinted through the darkness, desperate to make out the figure. There, silhouetted by the porch light, stood Rachel. The girl's eyes glinted with the kind of mischief that sent a jolt of ice coursing through Hannah's veins. "Help me," a voice gasped from the shadows behind Rachel. It was Jake. "Mom, I'm in the backyard." Panic ignited her blood, compelling her forward. "Wait right there, Jake," she yelled, breaking into a sprint. Rachel didn't move. She just watched with that unnerving, knowing grin. Tentative steps led Hannah around the side of the house and down the narrow path to the backyard. Each step felt heavy with dread, the air thick with unspeakable tension. "Jake," she cried out again. An electrical tension crackled in the air. As she reached the back gate, her pulse quickened. The door swung ajar, creaking as if a ghost were beckoning her inside. A limited expanse of shadows loomed at the edge of the yard, creeping closer to where her son's voice had come from. She pushed through the gate, her breath caught in her throat. There, sprawled among the gnarled roots of an ancient tree, was Jake, eyes wide with fear.
"Mom."
"It pulled me," he cried out, pointing at the depths behind him.
"What?"
"What pulled you?" Hannah knelt beside him, grasping his shoulders, her heart racing as dread pooled in her stomach. But before he could respond, a chilling, whispery voice curled around her, like smoke wafting through the air. "You shouldn't have come here, Hannah." The voice was soft yet filled with an icy malice, seeming to echo from the very earth beneath her feet. Shadows drifted along the ground, twisting into grotesque shapes that danced closer, blurring the line between nightmare and reality. Hannah swung around, her hair standing on end. Rachel stood at the edge of the yard, a sinister grin stretching across her face, but it wasn't just that, it was what lay behind her. Faint silhouettes lingered in the murky darkness, faces twisted with despair and malice, desperate for release. "Join us, Hannah, you and your children." Hannah felt her mind unraveling as she clutched Jake tighter.
"Run. Now."
she screamed, instinctively pulling him away from the abyss of screaming shadows. They bolted through the yard, the sinister laughter of the neighbors rising behind them. Every footfall echoed doom, each heartbeat a countdown. A rush of raw terror propelled them forward, the unseen horror clawing at their heels. Just as they reached the gate, a pair of icy hands grazed her shoulder. She spun around, only to find nothing, yet the laughter clung to the air, taunting, teasing. As they raced toward the front of the house, Hannah dared not look back. She could feel the darkness pressing closer, eager to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a crash echoed in the night. The front door swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow. It wasn't a neighbor, but a presence she recognized from her nightmares. "Get inside," Hannah screamed, shoving Jake through the door. But just as she turned to follow him, she felt a sharp tug strong enough to pull her back into the darkness, the thought clashing with the little sense she had left. What would happen if she was taken? What if she couldn't escape? What awaited them on the other side of that door? Would they find protection or something far worse? The door slammed shut behind them, a final barrier between Hannah and the terror gnawing at her heels. Panting, she pressed her back against the cool wood, feeling the last vestiges of belonging slip away from her fingertips. The interior of the house was dimly lit, filled with shadows that reached like long fingers across the floor.
"Mom, what was that?"
Jake whimpered, his wide eyes darting around the room, searching for the thing that had pulled him. Hannah's heart sank as she took in the familiar surroundings, now drenched in an unfamiliar chill. This was their home, once a sanctuary. Now it felt like a trap. "I don't know, sweetheart."
"Stay close to me."
They moved into the living room, where the familiar furniture loomed like silent sentinels. The curtains fluttered ominously, letting in an eerie glow from the streetlights outside. Shadows twisted and danced along the walls, setting Hannah's nerves on edge. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, rattling dishes on the countertops. Hannah froze, her heart in her throat. She grasped Jake's hand tighter. "Did you hear that?" "I don't want to be here," Jake stammered. "Me neither." Hannah's voice shook. "But we can't let whatever that is get in." They crept toward the kitchen, each step heavy with dread. The air felt thick, pressing down on them like a weight. As they approached the doorway, the light flickered, casting manic shadows that twisted across the floor. Hannah took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We have to check." With a swift motion, she pushed the door open. The kitchen was in disarray, chairs were overturned, and the table was splattered with what looked like mud, but something instinctual told her it wasn't just dirt. "Mom, look." Jake pointed at the floor. In the center of the chaos, a dark, viscous substance pooled, forming grotesque shapes that writhed and shifted. Shapes that resembled small hands, reaching up toward them. Hannah's stomach turned, terror clawing at her insides.
What is that?
"I don't know," Jake whispered, backing away. Before she could respond, a whisper threaded through the air, cold and resentful. "Leave now, it's too late." Hannah reflexively stepped back, pulling Jake with her into the hall. "We have to hide," she said, panic flooding her voice. They darted into a closet, cramming themselves between coats and old boxes. The door creaked but held. Every breath was a shallow gasp, every heartbeat a booming drum in the silence. They huddled together, Jake's small body trembling against her. Outside, the shadows stirred. Footsteps echoed in the darkness, too many to count, their movements echoing slight murmurs. "Join us," they beckoned softly, a haunting chorus that sent chills racing down Hannah's spine. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake whispered, his face pale and drawn. Hannah's mind spiraled. They had to escape, but how? She reached for the door, ready to burst out, when the floor creaked loudly beneath them. The whispers intensified, swirling like a storm, a cacophony of despair threatening to swallow them whole. "Stay quiet," she hissed, panic tightening its grip. But it was no use. The closet door rattled violently, as if something outside was trying to force its way in. The voice became clearer, sharp with venom. "You can't hide from us." Hannah, the door burst open, revealing a nightmarish figure draped in darkness, its eyes blazing with a malevolent light. It reached toward them, and Hannah felt a cold grip on her heart, paralyzing her with fear.
"Jake!"
she screamed, yanking him closer. The figure advanced, each movement stretching time, and its eternal moment of horrific clarity. With a surge of instinct, she shoved Jake behind her, but her escape plan crumbled into a whirlwind of terror when she realized the door to their reality was no longer behind them. They had stepped into a world of shadows. What awaited outside the confines of their home? Would they confront the nightmare or succumb to its grasp? In that moment of desperation, Hannah realized she might not be able to protect Jake from every darkness lurking in this twisted world. And, with that thought came a chilling revelation that filled her with dread. The darkness wasn't just outside anymore, it was creeping inside as well. What would they have to sacrifice to escape? The figure loomed closer, its features obscured by a shroud of darkness that clung to it like a cloak. Hannah's heart raced, each thud echoing in her ears, drowning out the terrifying whispers that filled the air.
"Mom?"
Jake's voice went high-pitched, trembling with fear, and it was enough to snap her out of her paralysis. Hannah took a step forward, instinct demanding she protect her son at all costs. "Stay back," she yelled, her voice breaking through the icy despair that enveloped them. She grabbed a nearby coat rack as a weapon, feeling its cold, smooth surface reassuring against her palm. The figure paused, its eerie eyes narrowing as if considering her. The shadows rippled and twisted around its form, almost alive, and the sensation of dread surged through her. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to escape.
"What do you want?"
Hannah shouted into the shadows, but her voice trembled, betraying her nerves. The thing didn't answer, merely tilted its head, the pose mocking her bravery. The whispers grew louder, thrumming like a heartbeat. "Sacrifice, join us," Jake's breathing quickened, and she felt him tremble against her leg. "Mom, please," he whimpered, looking away from the figure, fear etched across his small face. Hannah's resolve hardened. "Keep your eyes on me, Jake. We'll get out of this." With a fierce sweep, she swung the coat rack toward the figure, but it passed right through, dispersing into shadows like smoke.
Mom.
Jake screamed as the shadows twisted back again, tantalizing and terrifying, cold tendrils reaching for them through the closet door.
Run.
She shouted, urgency sharpening her tone. She pushed Jake ahead into the labyrinth of shadows. They stumbled out of the closet, and the room shifted around them, walls bending and warping, feeling too small, suffocating. They were in the hallway now, but it felt wrong, like a pale imitation of the home they had known. Paintings hung crookedly, their images swirling, faces shifting in a grotesque dance of distorted fear. She could see them now, the figures smiling with ghastly grins, eyes hollow and dark. "Where do we go?" Jake gasped, looking back at the closet as if expecting it to swallow them whole. Hannah felt the rising panic claw at her throat. "We find a way out." She tugged him forward, but every turn seemed to lead them deeper into chaos. Shadows mocked them, flashing across the walls as they abandoned one horrifying scene for another, a flickering light bulb, a door that closed on its own, cold drafts that whispered secrets they could not understand. The darkness was alive, pulsing with a sinister energy that threatened to wrap around them like a shroud. Hannah felt her breath quicken, gasping against the weight of despair that threatened to collapse on her. And then, she saw a flicker of light at the end of the hall, a door that looked familiar. A door that seemed to draw her in, urging her to step into its warmth. Hope sparked inside her, but the shadows whispered louder, chaos erupting behind her.
"Jake.
We have to run." She pushed him toward the light, their only chance of escape. As they sprinted, a cacophony of voices rose behind them, reaching for Hannah. "You cannot leave. You belong here. Join us." "Faster," Hannah urged, feeling the shadows creeping closer. But the door felt miles away, the walls pushing together in a suffocating grip. Just as they reached for the handle, Jake slipped, stumbling. Fear shot through Hannah as she turned.
"Jake."
And in that moment, an even darker figure emerged, taking hold of her son's arm, pulling him back. Hannah's heart fractured. The screams filled the air, twisting into a horrid symphony of despair. "Let him go," she shrieked, lunging forward as the shadows coiled tighter, dragging him into the darkness. She felt the icy fingers of the void tugging at her, threatening to steal her strength. With a primal scream, she fought against the darkness, determined to save her son from whatever horror awaited. And just as her grasp faltered, the door burst open, revealing blinding light that beckoned. But would that light lead them to safety or further into the abyss? "Dang it, we're not done yet," Hannah whispered to herself as she surged forward, adrenaline surging through her veins. She couldn't lose Jake.
Not now.
What would she have to confront to reclaim her son from the beast of darkness? The light pulled her in, a desperate beacon in the oppressive gloom, but as Hannah raced towards it, the darkness clawed at her. Tendrils of shadow wrapped tight around her ankles, pulling her back as if the house itself was alive, fighting to keep her imprisoned.
"No,"
she shouted, summoning every ounce of strength. She looked back at Jake, his terrified face trapped in a silent scream, eyes wide with sheer terror. The shadow that had seized him loomed high, a grotesque silhouette against the dimness. Its hand, cold and skeletal, tightened around Jake's wrist, dragging him away from her.
"Mom."
He cried out, the desperation in his voice slicing through the chaos like a knife. In that fleeting moment, Hannah's heart felt like it would explode. She had to act fast. The light poured through the door, wrapping around her like a warm blanket, yet the shadows fought with relentless fury.
"Jake, hold on to something,"
she yelled, vision narrowing on the light's inviting glow. The whispers reached a fever pitch, drowning out everything. "Join us, join us, join us." It chanted, a sinister melody that echoed in her skull. It was as if the house itself were enlisted in their torment, Eager to claim them both, desperation surged within her. She released her grip from the coat rack, letting it clatter uselessly to the floor. Her feet pounded against the wooden boards, sending vibrations through her body. She pushed off with all her might, vaulting her way toward the light, forcing air into her protest-filled lungs. She wasn't losing Jake. No way. Suddenly, she felt the darkness concede slightly as the shadows recoiled, granting her momentary passage.
Mom.
Jake's voice pierced through the din, pulling her focus back to him. She stared into his terrified eyes, and it felt like she was tethered to him in a way that was stronger than the grip of the darkness. In a swift motion, she lunged, reaching out with both hands. Waiting until the last possible millisecond, she dove, grabbing Jake's arms. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the chaos dissolved. She could feel his panic wash over her, and it blended with her determination. Then, the shadows retaliated with a violent yanking force, their cold grip tightening. Hannah felt a sharp pain in her arm as the dark fingers dug in, a vice squeezing around them. "Hold on to me, Jake. I won't let go." Hannah screamed, grasping him tight. The shadows snarled, angry at her resolve, hurling them both into a whirlpool of cold and confusion. With a mighty heave, she pulled them towards the light. The sensation was electric, energy crackling through her. Each second became an eternity as she fought against the unseen force dragging them back. The light grew brighter, illuminating the terror behind them. The grotesque figure sneered, its eyes piercing through her heart, as if to say she would never escape. Almost there, she roared, lungs on fire, summoning an inner strength she'd never known she possessed. Finally, they broke through the threshold of the light. A whoosh of cool air enveloped them, as if they had plunged into a pool of fresh water. But there was no calm beyond. The hallway twisted, a new world emerging, a nightmarish reflection of the one they had just escaped. The walls were pulsating, a grotesque skin breathing in and out, the familiar pain of the place twisting into something alien and bizarre. And then, looming at the other end of the warped corridor, stood another figure, darker than before, its form almost blending into the shadows that billowed like smoke around it. Hannah's heart raced with renewed terror. It was waiting for them. Mom, Jake's voice trembled again, a whisper clawing at her mind as dread settled like a weight in her gut. What if it's worse this time? Sweat trickled down her brow, reality crashing around her like waves against a cliff. "I don't know, Jake, but we have to keep moving," she said, determination settling into her bones once more, and as they stepped forward, the shadows whispered sweet promises of despair. "You can't escape, you'll never escape. What price? Would she pay to keep her son safe? Would their bravery only lead them deeper into this maddening maze of terror?" Hannah felt the urge to look back, but she knew that was a trap. In that moment, it dawned on her the weight of the shadows had content. They weren't just threats. They were alive with intention. She clenched her fists, a new realization hanging heavy in the air. The darkness wanted more than just Jake. It wanted her too. Could they outrun the horrors, or was the darkness destined to claim them both? Hannah squared her shoulders, eyes locked on the figure lurking ahead. The air thickened, crackling with malevolence. Shadows danced around it, hungry and eager. She sensed the darkness, wanting to swallow them whole. "Keep close, Jake," she urged, though her heart raced with fear. They moved forward, each step echoing in the silence, the pulse of the house reverberating like a heartbeat. The walls moved subtly, almost as if they were breathing along with them, a reminder that they weren't alone. The figure shifted, revealing ghastly features, a twisted mass of eyes and lips that formed a grotesque smile. It beckoned them closer with bony fingers that creaked with every slight movement. Hannah felt bile rise in her throat. "We need to go," she hissed, glancing sideways at Jake. His small hand trembled in hers, a fragile lifeline against the encroaching doom. As they edged forward, whispers slithered around them. Together forever they taunted, the voices echoing in a twisted symphony. Hannah gritted her teeth, eyes narrowing. This was a game to the house, and human lives were the stakes. She could feel it. She was more than just a mother. She was a pawn in a dark play. With a deep breath, she tugged Jake closer. Don't listen to them. They lie, she insisted, as she quickened her pace. Each stride was a battle against the creeping tendrils of fear that threatened to encase her. Yet, the darker figure loomed larger, pulsating with a thrill of sinister life. What does it want? Jake's voice trembled, words barely scraping past his lips. His innocence tore through Hannah like a knife of guilt. She wanted to spare him from this nightmare, but the truth was as grim as the shadows surrounding them. It wants us to give in, to lose hope, she whispered back, her voice barely above a murmur. The grotesque figure continued to stretch its limbs, shadowy claws gliding along the walls. They sprinted through the corridor, the once familiar landscape morphing into nightmarish reflections, pictures warped, doors that led nowhere, faces trapped in eternal screams. Hannah's mind raced. What if this was hell? What if every step drew them deeper into an inescapable fate? Suddenly, an unbearable weight slammed into them, as if the air itself conspired to hold them down. Hannah gasped for breath, a grip of frost coiling around her. All around them, the whispers flared into an uproar, clawing at her thoughts.
Give in.
Embrace us, they crooned, wrapping around her mind like a suffocating blanket. Shadows flickered, and the air grew cold.
No.
Hannah shouted, forcing her will against the tide of despair. She glanced at Jake, whose wide-eyed fear only fueled her resolve. She wouldn't let him see her falter. In a moment of clarity, she remembered the light, the way it had offered them sanctuary. This way, she cried, sprinting toward a doorway that glimmered faintly at the end of the hall. The dark figure recoiled, letting out a keening wail, a sound that sliced through the air. But that only ignited Hannah's adrenaline. Run, Jake.
Run.
She barely heard his footsteps behind her, but the weight of the shadows was relentless. Behind them, the ground heaved, and the wall began to open, dark mouths stretching wide, hungry for prey. Hannah's lungs burned, but she pushed through, pulling Jake along. The doorway loomed closer, a beacon promising escape and danger alike. Hannah's heart raced in synchrony with each pounding footstep. This had to work, it just had to. But as they neared the light, she felt the shadows surge forward, an overwhelming force. Mom, it won't let us go. It won't. Jake's voice cracked, desperation lacing every syllable. Don't look back. Focus on me, she screamed back, aching to comfort him. As they lunged into the doorway, Hannah felt the shadows lurch around them, wild and angry. Would they take one last desperate grip? At that moment, the world faded, the darkness clashed against the light, and Hannah wondered if their sacrifices had finally led them to freedom, or sealed their fate in another echo of despair. Was this yet another trap, another illusion? As the light flickered, doubt crept in. What now? Hannah thought, heart pounding as the room spun. And then, from the depths of the shadows, a familiar voice echoed, thick with laughter. You really think you can escape? Time froze. What awaited them this time? The light faded, and in an instant, Hannah and Jake found themselves in a cramped, dimly lit room that smelled of mildew and despair. The confines brushed against them like the dying embrace of a forgotten tomb. Hannah's heart hammered violently, every beat echoing in the silence. Where are we? Jake's voice was shaky, uncertainty clinging to his words like a heavy fog. Hannah scanned the room, panic clawing at her insides. Cracked walls strung with cobwebs surrounded them, and dusty furniture sat as unpredictable relics from an abandoned life. The echoes of sinister laughter rolled in like thunder, vibrating through her bones. I don't know, she whispered, trying to conceal her own fear. Suddenly, a creaking sound shattered the stillness, like fingernails scraping across a chalkboard. Hannah froze, instincts screaming at her to flee, but her legs felt heavy, as if the very air was pulling her down. A dark figure materialized in the corner, slick shadows coiling around it like a cloak of nightmares. Did you really think the light would save you? The laughter grew louder, mocking, as the entity stepped forward, revealing two twisted eyes glimmering with malice. "Let us go," Hannah shouted, stepping protectively in front of Jake, but her voice was small against the rising tide of terror. "Why should I?" The figure sneered, its form writhing, teasing the edges of Hannah's vision. "You're all mine now, you belong to me." From somewhere deep within, a primal fear surged up. Hannah's breaths came quicker, jagged. She felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of darkness, but she wouldn't cave. "We want to give in. We'll find a way together."
Together?
It hissed, and the words dripped with disdain. "You and your boy." Ah, sweet irony. "You think this is about love?" The shadows twisted around the figure, forming ghastly faces that protruded in hungry agony. "The house craves despair, and you're just the appetizers." The room shuddered as if the walls were listening, hungry for their panic. Curtains flapped as if caught in an invisible wind. "You have to fight," she urged Jake. "It feeds on fear." But Jake's eyes shimmered with tears. "Mom, it's so dark I'm scared." Hannah felt her resolve shatter, a mother's heart tightening in anxiety. "Listen to me, Jake. Focus on me. We're stronger than it wants us to be." Before they could move, the sinister faces stretched and whispered, "You can't fight what you are. You already belong here." Just let go. The shadows began to swirl around them, surrounding Hannah and Jake, drawing them closer to the walls. A horrible chill seeped into their skin, freezing them in place. Hannah felt the fabric of her courage slipping away.
No.
She cried, yanking Jake's hand, pulling him hard against her. "We want to be trapped."
Not now.
With every ounce of strength, she closed her eyes, feeling the darkness wrap around them, but choosing to focus on the warmth of Jake's small hand in hers. "Together," she repeated, louder this time. "We are stronger." The shadows recoiled slightly, the dark figure faltering. "You defy me? I defy you." Just then, a blinding flash burst from deep within the room, radiating around them, unraveling the dark coils of despair. Voices clamored, rising to a cacophony. Shrieks of anguish swirled in the light, fraying the shadows. "Keep going," Jake urged, his courage rekindled. In that moment, Hannah could feel the rush of energy, the power of belief surging. They bolted forward, breaking through the vibrant light that consumed the darkness, and the shadows screeched in retaliation. But as they moved, another dreaded sound echoed, a whisper too close for comfort, creeping into Hannah's ear. "You think this is the end? You cannot escape what lies within you." A cold wave of dread washed over her, but she pressed on, heart racing. What did that mean? What was lying in wait, far deeper than this darkness? As Hannah and Jake burst through into the next room, the laughter faded, but the chill lingered, filling the void in their hearts. And in that silence lay an answer to an unformed question: what kind of monster stalked them? Within the deeper recesses of the house, and their very souls? What horrors awaited around the corner as Hannah strived to protect the only light in her life? The next room opened up like a hungry maw, swallowing the fading light behind them. It resembled a narrow corridor, coated in a layer of thick, gray dust. Shadows writhed in every corner, and silence wrapped itself around Hannah and Jake like an oppressive fog. Hannah could feel the dread crawling up her spine, each step heavier than the last. "Mom, I can't see anything," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible as they ventured further in. He squeezed her hand tighter. "No more than before," she replied, trying to sound reassuring, but her own voice trembled, betraying her. As they moved quietly, the walls seemed to breathe, expelling stale air that contained the putrid scent of decay. With every step, she felt the house was alive. It responded to their presence, shuddering in anticipation. Shadows flickered around them, teasing glimpses of figures that weren't there. Hannah's heart raced. The choking fear clawed at her throat like a predator ready to strike. Suddenly, the distant echo of a child's laughter filled the corridor, sweet and innocent, but twisted into something sinister. It felt wrong, a sharp contrast to the dark aura that enveloped them. "Jake, Stay close, she whispered, her eyes darting, searching for the source. Another giggle chimed out, sending chills down Hannah's back. It's just a trick, she reassured herself aloud. But there was hesitation in her voice. She tried to push the fear away, but it coiled tighter around her heart. They reached the end of the corridor, where an ancient door stood ajar, its hinges rusted and creaking as if in pain. A low, chilling wind sneaked into the hallway from beyond, beckoning them forward. We should go back, Jake whispered, his face pale, eyes brimming with unshed tears. No, we need to find a way out, Hannah replied, though even she questioned whether they were headed towards salvation or doom. Together. She tightened her grip on his hand, feeling his warmth against the biting cold of the air. Pushing the door slightly, it swung open with a long, sinister creak, revealing a grand room that was both mesmerizing and horrifying. The walls were lined with faded portraits, the eyes of their former inhabitants gleaming with a knowing watchfulness. In the center stood a long wooden table, scattered with broken trinkets and dusty relics, a time capsule of lost lives. Mom. Jake's voice trembled as he pointed at the far end of the room where something moved in the shadows, something far darker than the night itself. What is it? Hannah stepped forward, her breath hitching as she squinted into the gloom. The temperature dropped, and a whisper tickled the back of her mind, words she couldn't quite grasp, just beyond her reach. As they neared, the shadows coalesced into a figure, its features indistinct but radiating an ominous presence. The room held its breath, and so did she. The whispers crescendoed into a gale, echoing, join us, no. Hannah screamed, stepping back, panic surging. But the figure shifted into focus, revealing a ghastly visage, an amalgamation of sorrow and despair, as if countless souls had merged into one dark entity. This house knows you, Hannah, it rasped, the words curling around her like smoke. You cannot escape your past. Jake's grip faltered as he glanced at her, confusion and fear battling in his innocent eyes. She felt as though the walls were closing in, the powdery air thickening like fog. Stay with me, Jake, she cried, forcing herself to take a step forward. The entity's hollow eyes seemed to bore into her, searching for something buried deep within. I want to let it take you. But the moment hung there, suspended in a heavy silence, as if the house itself was waiting, bated breath on their next move. What lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? A rush of cold air swept through the room, extinguishing any flicker of hope. Then, the entity leaned closer, its voice a terrible echo. You'll face your truth whether you want to or not. Heart pounding, Hannah realized this was just the beginning. What truth awaited them on the other side of their fear? Hannah's heart raced, thrumming in her chest like a desperate drumbeat. The entity's presence pulled at her, an invisible tether that threatened to shred her sanity. She wanted to scream, to fight back against the tide of despair, but all that emerged was a choked sob. Mom? Jake's voice sliced through the suffocating silence, full of confusion and dread. He tugged at her hand, his small body trembling. Hush, Jake, Hannah whispered fiercely, determination rising within her. We need to stay strong. She couldn't afford to crumble, not now. Not when the darkness pressed against them with such force. The entity shifted, its features warping and distorting like a nightmarish reflection in a funhouse mirror. It turned its hollow gaze toward Jake, and for a moment, dread filled Hannah as she imagined it reaching for him, pulling him into the void. Don't touch him, she shouted, the edge of her voice cracking, laced with desperation. The room seemed to pulse, as though responding to her fear, shadows swirling like a storm ready to unleash its fury. Why do you resist? The figure whispered, its voice a low hiss that echoed as if it came from the very walls. Each word felt like ice stabbing into her skin, slicing open the fragile barriers she had erected against the memories that haunted her. Because I want to lose him, she shot back, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She took a step toward the entity, every instinct screaming at her to flee, yet she stood her ground, trembling but defiant. The entity's laughter echoed, a cacophony of distorted voices merging into a murky sound that resonated in her bones. You think you can protect him from the truth? This house reveals all. It swayed, shadows swirling around it like a tornado, growing more chaotic. Jake's eyes widened in horror. Mom, please, he pulled back, sensing the danger, the truth lurking just out of the light. They had come seeking answers. But what if those answers were horrors they weren't prepared to face? Just hold on, she urged softly, desperate to keep her son anchored in reality. The atmosphere thickened, charging with ominous energy as the walls murmured ancient secrets. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shifted, groaning as the dark shifted around them, trying to draw them deeper into its grasp.
Look,
Jake cried, pointing beyond the table. A cracked mirror glimmered in the faded moonlight, reflecting not just their images, but snippets of moments from years past. Laughter. Happiness. Then darkness engulfed them. The mirror pulsed, fragmenting into fractured reflections of her life, moments lost and forgotten, buried beneath layers of grime and regret. She saw herself as a child, carefree and bright, before sorrow wrapped itself around her like a ball and chain. Mom, what is that? Jake's voice broke through her reverie, drawing her attention back to the looming figure. In that moment, she realized it wasn't just a specter. It was a manifestation of her own buried truths. This is your reality, Hannah, the entity hissed, rise or be consumed. Panic coursed through her veins as her choices bared their fangs. Each image in the mirror taunted her fears of failure, the betrayals she'd suffered, the irrevocable choices she'd made. The walls closed in, squeezing her breath from her lungs. I want tea, she gasped, words clattering into the oppressive air. But the room began spinning, dark tendrils wrapping around her, trying to pull her toward the shards of her past reflected in the mirror.
Mom,
Jake cried, his fear igniting her will to fight. Don't let it take you. Hannah steadied herself, drawing strength from her son. She couldn't fail him not again. With a surge of defiance, she stepped toward the mirror, ready to confront the shadows threatening to drown them both. Together, she said, clutching Jake's small hand tightly. As they moved toward the glass, a chill wind swept through the room, whispering tales of despair, but Hannah could feel the tide shifting, the darkness pushing against her resolves. Would she face the truth, or let it consume them? The mirror continued to shimmer, reflecting possibilities yet unseen, each whisper pulling them closer. What truths waited within its depths, and could she muster the strength to confront them? Hannah's heart raced, but she fought against the suffocating grip of fear. She and Jake stood before the mirror, each reflection facing fragments of their lives, fractured promises, and haunting regrets. The entity loomed nearby, its malignance palpable, drawing power from the confusion it sowed within them. Don't let it win, she said fiercely, squeezing Jake's hand a little tighter. His wide, innocent eyes mirrored her determination, fear flickering in their depths. The very air shimmered with tension as they prepared to confront the truths that threatened to unravel everything they had worked for. Together, Hannah repeated, channeling every ounce of love she felt for Jake. He nodded, his small frame trembling yet resolute. With each step towards the mirror, the reflection stirred, flickering through moments both beautiful and bitter. Their laughter, their struggles, the pain of the city they had escaped. In a bewildering twist, these memories started to meld with her subconscious, flooding her with the emotions she had buried for far too long. Face them, Hannah. Let go, the entity urged, its voice seeping into her mind like poison. You're too weak to withstand your past. You'll be consumed.
no.
Hannah shouted defiantly.
You don't own me.
Drawing from the depths of her strength, she took another step forward, grounded by Jake's unwavering presence beside her. The images flickered, erratically, childhood joy exchanged for adult sorrow, and Hannah traded doubt for resolve. You are not my past, she declared as she pressed her palm against the mirror's surface. The glass rippled, sending shards of reflected light shooting back at the entity. With each word, the dark presence staggered, shadows recoiling as her fierce spirit emanated warmth. The whispers dulled, quelled by the fiery defiance that surged in her heart. Suddenly, the memories surged like a tidal wave, crashing into her with a deafening roar, flooding her mind with clarity. The loneliness she had felt after her marriage fell apart, the anxiety that gripped her as she fought tirelessly to protect her children, it all came flooding back. But instead of despair, she felt strength. "I am not defined by them," Hannah shouted, her voice rising above the cacophony of dread. "I am stronger than my fears, and I will protect my son." She felt Jake's unwavering grip, and it fueled her resolve even further. He needed her just as much as she needed him. With a fierce breath, Hannah surged forward, grabbing Jake with both hands. Together, they leaned into the mirror, and in that moment, the surface shattered, fragments bursting forth like light breaking through darkness. The memories morphed, allowing her not just to face her pain but to embrace it. Each shard became a piece of her story, a tale of resilience, of triumph over despair.
Mom.
Jake cried, excitement lighting up his expression, and they pushed through the mirror, feeling a rush of energy as they crossed the boundary into the depths of the house. The darkness, another illusion, a fleeting nightmare. Suddenly, they found themselves outside in the cool night air, the house looming behind them like a great beast defeated. Hannah took a deep breath, relief crashing over her like a wave. The weight of fear lifted, leaving only the lingering traces behind. Did we do it?" Jake's voice trembled, a hint of disbelief mingling with the hope blooming in his heart. Hannah knelt and hugged him tight. "Yes, sweetheart. We faced it, all of it. And we came out stronger." The night sky was clear, dotted with stars, each one shining a little brighter than before, a promise that they had reclaimed their lives. A sense of new beginnings washed over them as they stepped away from the dark shadows of the past. The memories would linger, but they would no longer define her or Jake. Their bond was forged in the fire of terror, now unbreakable and radiating with warmth, a safe haven amidst chaos. As they walked away from the cottage, hand in hand, Hannah felt lighter, as if the burdens of past regrets had finally released their grip, and in that moment, she knew they were free. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that get under your skin. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us keep bringing you these wild tales. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this finale. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions.